All right, today we are tackling one of the biggest, most debated prophecies in all of history, the 7 seals from the book of Revelation. And we're going to be diving into a really unique and, I gotta say, pretty controversial interpretation that basically reframes everything we thought we knew about the end times. So let me start with a pretty wild question for you. What if the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, conquest, war, famine, death, what if they aren't coming for us in the future? What if they've already written? I know, it sounds crazy, but the source material we're digging into today argues for that exact theory, that the apocalypse isn't just on the horizon. In many ways, it's already happened. I mean, for almost 2,000 years, people have been trying to crack the code of these 7 seals. They're basically seen as the roadmap to the end of the world, right? A play-by-play of how everything is supposed to go down. It's this giant cosmic puzzle that has fascinated and, let's be real, absolutely terrified people for centuries.
But here's the twist. The source material we're exploring claims the secret to unlocking this whole thing hasn't been buried in some obscure text. Nope, it's been sitting there in plain sight this whole time. And get this, it's in the chapter right before the horsemen even gallop onto the scene.
And this verse, right here, is what the author says is the secret key. See, just as the Lamb is found worthy to open the seals, the heavens basically lists off 7 things he's worthy to receive. The theory is that this list is the codebreaker. Let's run through them. Power, riches, wisdom, strength, honor, glory, and blessing.
Okay, so how does this secret key actually work? Well, the whole theory is built on a pretty straightforward logic. It goes like this. First, each of the 7 seals isn't just some random disaster. It has a specific goal. Second, the goals are to deliver those 7 essences from the verse we just read, one by one in that exact order. Third, Christ receives these essences through his main representative on earth, which this source identifies as the church. So you see, that list, in order, becomes the master key for decoding the entire prophecy.
All right, so let's actually put this key in the lock and see what happens. The author starts by applying it to the past, arguing that the first 4 seals, the 4 horsemen, aren't about some terrifying future. Nope, they're supposedly major events that are already in our history books.
Okay, so this table really maps it all out. Let's just walk through it. The first seal, the white horse of conquest, the theory links that to when Emperor Constantine made Christianity the religion of the Roman Empire. And what did that give the church? The very first essence, power. Makes sense, right? Next, the second seal, the red horse of war. This is interpreted as the Crusades, which, opened up all these trade routes and brought incredible riches to the church. Then you have the black horse, which is connected to the third essence, wisdom. The theory ties this to the Renaissance, a time when the church absorbed all this incredible ancient knowledge. And finally, the fourth seal, the pale horse of death. This gets linked to the First and Second World Wars, a devastating period that the author claims was meant to forge the church's ultimate worldly strength.
So, if we go along with this idea for a second, that the 4 horsemen have already ridden through our history, then the big question is, what's next? And this is where the theory takes a sharp turn, pivoting away from the past and looking directly at our future, focusing on the seals that haven't been opened yet.
Which brings us to our next section, a prophecy for today, and we're going to decode the 5th seal. And I have to tell you, this part contains what is probably the most specific and, frankly, the most startling claim in this entire theory, the interpretation of the 5th seal. Okay, now, to really get the next prediction, you have to understand a really crucial piece of symbolism that the author puts forward. They argue that in certain biblical prophecies, the word Lebanon is actually a code word for the Vatican. Now, the reasoning for this is twofold. First, the name Lebanon itself means white, just like the Vatican's flag. And second, its famous cedars are said to be symbols for the high clergy, like popes and cardinals.
The author really builds this case on verses like this one from Zechariah. Now, if you read it with that Lebanon equals Vatican code in mind, the verse transforms into a pretty direct and chilling prophecy. Open thy doors, O Lebanon, becomes, open your doors, O Vatican, that the fire may devour thy cedars, or your popes and cardinals.
And this, right here, leads to the author's single most stunning conclusion, that the 5th seal, the one that describes the souls of martyrs crying out from under an altar, is a literal prophecy for the burning of the Vatican.
But why? Why would an event that catastrophic happen? Well, according to this theory, it all goes right back to that secret key. The goal of this seal, this terrible event, is for the church to receive the 5th essence on that list. And what's the 5th one? Honor. The idea is that this honor would come from the world's reaction to the martyrdom of its saints.
So based on that one massive predicted event, the author then lays out a very specific timeline for everything that's supposed to follow, all the way to the end of the age.
And this entire timeline is framed by this one specific verse from Matthew. In it, Jesus says that the generation that sees all these things begin will also be around to see them end. You can think of it as the prophecy's cosmic stopwatch.
So the big question is, how long is a biblical generation? Well, based on a verse in Genesis, the author defines it as 120 years. And the theory claims that this final 120-year generation kicked off with the fourth seal, which they say was the start of World War I, back in 1914.
So this timeline kind of puts it all together into a final countdown. The clock started ticking in 1914 with World War I. Then, at some point in our future, the fifth seal event, the burning of the Vatican, is supposed to happen, and that triggers the final countdown. From that event, it's a 1,290-day wait until the Great Tribulation, or the sixth seal, begins. And that tribulation itself lasts another 45 days. The kicker? All of it, according to the author, has to be wrapped up before that 120-year generation ends, which gives us a final absolute deadline of 2034.
So, where does that leave us? Is this an intricate, brilliant decoding of an ancient prophecy that's been missed for centuries? Or is it a radical, modern theory that pieces together history and scripture in a new way? The source presents its case, and we've laid it out for you. It definitely leaves you to ponder the signs of the times.